The next 2 weeks that passed almost drove me insane. It was so quiet, and I was so bored. I began to count the minutes to Gideon's return. He was always gone before I woke. Most times, he was down on the field. He came back with a breakfast tray, and then he'd put the chains back on, of course. Then he'd leave again and come back with a lunch tray. Then he'd leave again, and finally he'll come back with a dinner tray. And that was my favorite time because that meant he was in for the rest of the night. He brought me a Bible, and after we ate, we would read together. It was during these times that I learned some very interesting things about him. For example, one night we were reading in Leviticus 19 and 20. And we got to talking about witchcraft. And somehow that led to a conversation on his mixed heritage. My father, he said, he was so proud to be Haitian, proud of his African roots. Whenever he was sober enough to speak, he would tell my brother and I stories of our brave ancestors who used to rebel against their slave masters. He chuckled. Life has a funny way of working out. My father loved my brother and I, but he loved heroin more. What about your mother? I asked him. He shook his head. She hated me. She tolerated my little brother, but it was my 2 youngest brothers that were her pride and joy. If it was up to her, she would have just gotten rid of me, as she tried to. She packed my brother and I up and shipped us off to New York to live with my pops in Washington Heights. But sometimes he would go missing for weeks at a time, and then we get shipped right back here. Once my mother had gotten so fed up, and my grandfather sent us across the river to my father's mother's house, who stays in Haiti. He shook his head. Over there, voodoo is real big. Why is that? I asked him. I had always been curious about the Haitian people and voodoo. Well, they believe that voodoo was responsible for the Haitian Revolution. It is said that Toussaint L'Ouverture was a faithful practicer of the religion. So now you can't convince the people that voodoo may be hurting them instead of helping them. I learned firsthand that it was not good for me. One night I followed one of my older cousins up into the hills. My family and some of their neighbors were up there doing some kind of ritual. I'm standing there wide-eyed watching as they took this black pig and they slit his throat. And then they just started spreading blood everywhere. Oh, I do mean everywhere. They was doing some crazy wild stuff, jumping around and chanting. Some folks was convulsing. Man, it was crazy. One drop of that pig blood landed on my arm. One drop. But something horrible happened after that. I felt my strength leave. As he spoke, he stared off into the distance, remembering it. I had never felt nothing so terrifying. I took off. I ran for my life, and I didn't start running until I got to the river. I got in the river and I washed everything off of me, right? Then I crossed the river back to the Dominican side. He chuckled. I ain't been back over there since. Where? To Haiti or your family's house? I asked. Both. My dad OD'd when I was 12, and I haven't seen his side of the family since then. So what, you like it here better? I asked. He shook his head. Nah, not really. Whereas my dad's people, they proud of their roots. My mom's folks, the complete opposite. Most would deny they're even black or from Africa. They say they're mixed. They're neither black or white. But some believe that they just white. The people in this village, they hated me and my brother. They believed we stained the pure image of the house of Mendez. Coming up, I had to fight every day. He chuckled again. My mom was a complete disappointment to hold, man, until she pushed him out, a white grandson. So, your other brothers are white? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, as white as any Dominican can get. You would never know that we were brothers, though. They have wives and children, and none of them speak to me. Why? I asked. He smiled. Well, because I'm a goon. I frowned. Why would you say something like that about yourself? It's true. My grandfather died, never bearing a son. So you would think me being the eldest grandson would in fact be his heir. Oh no, my skin was too dark. So instead he made Esteban, my second to the youngest brother, heir here. He shook his head. If I was a normal guy, I guess I would have been okay with it. But then I thought, why should I? So, he shrugged. I took what I was owed. My mouth fell open. And they just let you? He chuckled. And then he looked at me with serious eyes. Who's going to stop me? Well, since he put it in those terms, I could see why they would look at him as a goon. I, who at that time had been laying in the bed next to him, sat up. I had been wanting to ask him something for a while now, and it seemed like now was the perfect time. So, what happened with the church and the priests? I asked my question quietly. I know it was a topic of sensitivity around these neck of the woods. He inhaled, looking at me. I see some folks done filled you in about the story of old Diablo, huh? Maybe a little. He shook his head, turning to stare down at the floor. Father Alexander was behind all my suffering here when I was a child. Maybe the fact that my skin was so dark would have not been a great big deal if he had not told my grandfather that I was filled with evil spirits. He said it was the devil that made me so strong. He began to play with the elastic tie that was on his gym shorts. He told my grandfather that it was his duty to clean the world of the evil that had come through my grandfather's lineage. My mother wouldn't even look at me anymore. She didn't speak to me or even acknowledge I existed to her. So of course, me being a kid, I acted out. I just wanted whatever he was about to say. He changed his mind. Anyway, I overheard the old father telling my grandfather to put a bullet in my head. He shook his head, lost in his memories. I ran as fast as I could. But then I saw the man with no shoes. He was sitting by the river. I ran to him crying, scared. And he told me to go back and burn down the church. So I did. But before I did, I put chains on all the doors. And then I lit a match. He blinked, coming back to the present. I bet you think I'm evil too, he asked me. I frowned, shaking my head. No, why would you say that? Because I burned down the church and killed the man of the cloth. I fell back into the bed laughing. Man of the cloth, please. He looked at me surprised. Brother, it was you who got rid of evil. Trust me. But I thought you was all into this Bible stuff. I am. And I assure you that your church ain't got nothing to do with the Bible. He looked confused. but it was a church. Yeah, and I chuckled when he looked even more confused. Then I decided to put him out his misery. Look, these churches that you see, I held up air quotes when I said churches. They are not of Yah and Yehoshua. They are wicked. They don't follow his law. And they are full of paganism and the worship of the fallen. 99.9% of the people you see carrying these Bibles around, they clueless to what it really says. They may have read a few scriptures here or there, but for the most part, they depend on their pastor to give them their weekly dosage of scripture. There are things in the Bible that you will be amazed was there, simply because none of the churches talk about them. Like what, he asks. Okay, well, the Bible tells us to rest on the Sabbath. It's one day of the week where we're supposed to focus completely on the Father. We're supposed to set that day apart. What day does the church do that? I asked him. Sunday, he said without hesitation. The first day of the week. But the Bible tells us to set apart the seventh day of the week. Now, to some folks, that may not seem like a big deal. However, it is a great big deal to the Heavenly Father. The Bible says that if you keep the seventh day Sabbath, it is a sign to show who you worship. So, if the day you set apart is a sign as to who you worship, tell me, who in the world does all these folks worship that set apart the first day instead of the seventh day? He looked surprised. So you telling me that I need to shut the armory down on Saturday? I put my hand on my chest. I ain't telling you nothing, black man. However, if you're trying to follow Yah's laws, then yes, you're going to have to shut it down on the Sabbath. Did you know that it's against the law to eat pork? No, I didn't, he said. It's why the man with no shoes told you not to eat it. He looked at me strange for a minute. Who is the man with no shoes? He asked. I hesitated, looking to the side. He put his hand on my chin and gently turned my face back so that he could look into my eyes as I spoke. Gideon was big on that. He always looked into a person's eyes when they talked to him. Who is he, Princesita? I think maybe he's an angel, I whispered. An angel? He asked. I nodded. Think about it. Where were you when you seen him? You seen him when you were in Washington Heights, right? That's in New York. And then here by the river. You didn't think nothing strange about that? He chuckled. To tell you the truth, I always thought he was a figment of my imagination. I laughed at him. And so it went. Over the last 2 weeks, we just talked. We talked about everything. We did other things too, like we played chess and sometimes we even played video games. Now, the first time we played video games, I found out I was a sore loser. It was some kind of fighting game and I wasn't bad at it. I mean, I had learned how to do a few tricks and whatnot. Anyway, we're sitting on his bed, next to each other, and I'm all in it trying to kill this man, you know what I mean? But no matter what I do, he keeps beating me. And boy, the rage, I just lost it. I threw the controller down on the ground. I turned to look at him and I just tackled him, At least, I tried. What really happened is I threw myself at him. He caught me mid-air and together we fell back on the bed. You are such a cheater, I yelled down in his face. He laughed at me. Babe, you a sore loser. I picked up the pillow and I beat him with it. When I was done, the smile left his face and it turned upside down. And I mean, it was an over-exaggerated sad face. What's wrong with you? I asked, laughing down at him. You hurt my feelings. Biting my lips so that I could stop grinning like a cheetah, I asked him how. Because you beat me up. He poked his lip out. Oh, I said, rubbing my finger along his poked out lip. You want to play again, and this time I will play nicer? I asked him. He shook his head, licking his lips in that way that, make a girl lose focus. What do you want then? Maybe if you gave me a kiss, it will make me feel better. Smiling, I leaned down and I gave him a loud kiss on his cheek. He frowned. See, that just made me feel worse. I leaned down and I kissed his lips gently. He lay there, letting me lead the way. Tentatively, I deepened the kiss. He moaned, and I felt that sense of empowerment. You see, I had learned something about this strong man over the last couple of weeks. He was strong at everything, even in the way he was reading and taking in his scriptures. But there was one area he was weak in. Me. I had even tested that out more and more as he fed me. I think I was ready to test out my plan and get out of these chains. I lifted my head. His eyes looked at my lips hungrily. I lowered my head as if I was going to kiss him again, but I brought it back up. His mouth followed, seeking my lips. I smiled, shaking my head at him. He narrowed his eyes before he brought his hand up to the back of my head and gently pushed my head the rest of the way. This time, when we kissed, he was in complete control. So, okay, I lost focus again. But when he stopped with those drugging kisses, my focus came back. I'm ready to negotiate, I told him. His smile was wolfish. He lifted his arms, putting his hand in the back of his head. Oh yeah? For what? I lifted my arms so that the chains could rattle. He grinned. I don't know. That's pretty big. What you got to barter for that? And I'm telling you now, these little kisses you've been teasing me with for the last 2 weeks ain't gonna do it. I grinned. I'll show you. I got up, holding my wrist out for him to take off the chains. He chuckled, but he undid the cuffs. I turned and I ran into the closet. I've been practicing this and working up my nerves for the last 2 weeks. This was daring. I took off my clothes and I slid into one of Señorita Bonita's nighttime creations. For the last 2 weeks, I have only worn one of Gideon's t-shirts and jogging pants to bed. Each night, I expected him to force me into putting one of these little flimsy little items on, but he didn't. He'll just chuckle and shake his head. But tonight I will do something different. That Friday, after we left Señorita Bonita's dress parlor, a ton of clothes came for me. The closet here put my closet back home to shame. I could just hear Nuria and Stormy's mouth now. I shook my head thinking of the irony. Tonight I had chose one of the less racier nighttime creations. I had worked up my nerves, but not enough for some of the things in that drawer. This one was pink and lacy, but it still covered all my vital areas enough for me to pull off what I had planned for the night. I wanted these chains gone, and I was not going to give him what he wanted, but I think I had figured out the next best thing. I took some calming breaths. I pray I hadn't judged his response to me wrong, and he really didn't find my body all that attractive. I inhaled. Opening the closet door, here goes nothing. I walked out. Gideon was sitting back on the corner of the bed, playing the video game. When I came out, he glanced back at me, then turned back to the TV, but then his head whipped back again. His mouth dropped open as his eyes slowly drank in my body. The game controller fell from his fingers. Damn, shorty. He put his hand on his chest. What you trying to do? I walked to the radio, biting my lip to keep from grinning. I had to try to look as professional as possible. I cued the music that I had waiting for me. In all my downtime, I had gone through all Gideon's music and I found the perfect song. When it came on, I slowly began to move my hips, nice and seductively. This way of dancing was a gift I discovered I had, while me, Nuria, and Stormy was acting crazy at Stormy's house, pretending to be Esther, dancing for the king after having a couple glasses of wine. Anyway, Nuria had shaken her head. That's a shame. You're a natural at that. It's always the pastor's daughters, ain't it? She said back then. I turned to face him. His eyes was glued to my body. He licked his lips as he watched me slowly approach. I dipped and I turned. I rubbed my hands slowly up my body and then put them in the air above my head. I gently moved my hips to the hypnotic music, pretending I was across the desert, dressed in the finest Arab garb, dancing for my king, dancing for my freedom from these chains. I stood in front of Gideon. He reached out his hand to touch me, and I hid it away. I moved my hips in front of him. Take away the chains, I told him, dipping down in front of him. He looked down at me. He was not focused on what I was saying, because the blood had all left his brain, leaving only a primal, hungry man in his wake. He reached out for me again. I hid his hand away again. I stopped dancing. I needed a little blood to go back to his brain. He blinked when I stopped, as if he was coming out a daze. Why you stop? He asked. The chains. That's what we're negotiating for here. I put my hands on my hip, biting my lip to keep from smiling. It was really something seeing this big, strong Gideon like this. His eyes narrowed as he looked at me. This is extortion, he told me. My head fell back and laughed. He was using my own words on me. No, baby, this is good old-fashioned negotiation, I said, throwing his words back at him. Come here, Safia. We can talk about the chains later. He put his hands around my waist, pulling me closer. I shook my head, pushing back out of his hands. No, now. I'm just going to let you know right now. I'm going to have to make you pay for teasing me like this, he threatened. I laughed in his face. The chains, I repeated. He grinned. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you got it. They're gone. He reached for me again. I stepped out of his reach. Permanently, I asked. For now? But I don't know. You might try to run away again. Then I'll have to put you back in them. I narrowed my eyes at that. I guess that was fair. But he grabbed me so fast, I didn't even have a chance to tell him it was a deal. He laid me on the bed next to him. He lay on his side on his elbow so that he could look down at me. You look so good, shorty. He reached up to the ribbon that held my nightie together and began to pull it. I grabbed his hand. Gideon, I'm not ready to go all the way just yet. He stared down at me and then nodded. I just want to maybe use my lips and hands. Is that okay? I stared at him. Every night we kissed. Sometimes it got really steamy. But tonight he wanted to take it further than we ever been. I licked my lips, thinking about it. I wanted him to do it. I've been waiting to go further. I've just been afraid. I nodded, my curiosity winning over my fear. Gideon made my body sing with just kissing my lips and neck. I couldn't help but wonder how deep the rabbit hole went.